It's all a picture of who Jesus is as our high priest. Jesus is greater. And so when we read in Hebrews that he's from the order of Melchizedek, that's the way the Hebrew writers is conveying this meaning to the recipients of this letter. Look how much greater Jesus is. He's from this order, Melchizedek. That's the picture of Jesus right there. He is greater. This is the big picture, right? Right off the bat, we get this big picture from verse 24 that he is forever, therefore he is better. Jesus is forever, therefore he is better than the old system. Already better. The needles haven't fallen from his tree. But then, that's big picture, but then it gets really personal. It gets really personal, and I love this, that forever nature of Jesus and our high priest and his ministry connects with each one of us in a very personal way. Look what it says in verse 25. In verse 25 it says, consequently, if you back up the phrase, it says, because he continues forever. Consequently, because he continues forever, he is able to save to the uttermost those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Now that's a verse you should memorize. That verse right there. That verse right there. I love it. Here's the celebration of Christmas. This verse right here, this description of Jesus, our high priest. Listen to this phrase. He is able. Doesn't that just stand in contrast to the old priestly system that has been proven over and over again? Unable. Not able to save, unable to fix, unable to deal with things permanently, not able to stick around forever. Unable. That's old system. And right off the bat, when we put the spotlight on Jesus, what do we see? He is able. That's what Christmas is about. That's why we talk about Jesus being the priest. Because he is able. When he arrived on the scene, he ushered in a ministry that proclaims loudly, he is able. Now, look at what he's able to do. If there's ever a phrase, underline this one, memorize this one. He is able. It says, he is able to save to the uttermost. The uttermost. Okay, listen up. There's not a single person in here who didn't come into this room with some uttermost. Do you know what I'm talking about? We all have uttermost, don't we? We have surface, we have 2 or 3 inches deep. We get to see all that kind of stuff, right? We see it, we know that. But there's some uttermost to ourselves that we don't even like to talk about, think about, look at, don't even want to address. And those are those deeply held things, those way back things, right? There's part of us that are just like so buried that we don't even want to address. I want to tell you something this morning. There's not a part of who you are this morning in which Jesus isn't able to save. He's able to save to the uttermost. That word uttermost carries with it the idea of completeness and entirety. Completeness and entirety, where the old system fails in that it is insufficient to save. Jesus saves completely to the uttermost. Now, when I said uttermost and I pointed and I made it personal to you, you had pictures and images and things come to your mind. I know I do. When we think uttermost, like the deepest things come to our mind. I'm going to say them out loud. But they come to our mind. I want you to know whatever came to your mind, Jesus is able as your high priest to save you and has saved you from those things. That's Christmas. That's what we celebrate. What a mixture of like, oh, I don't want to look at that hard stuff, and a mixture of joy knowing that he already has and has saved us from them. Isn't that a good Christmas thing? Amen. Oh, I just want to say Merry Christmas to that. Don't you hear how great our salvation is from Jesus, our high priest? It says if you draw near to him by faith, acknowledging who he is and your desperate need for him, there's not a single part of you he is not able to save, even the deepest, darkest, uttermost place. Merry Christmas. That's why we celebrate. It goes on. It goes on. The good news about Jesus, our high priest, goes on. Just in verse 25, it says, For he always lives to make intercession. Do you see that beautiful word? I mean, intercession is beautiful. We'll talk about it. But I'm talking about the beautiful word that says always. Always makes intercession. Always. What falls outside of always? Nothing. Nothing. I love this interceding, this intercession. He's continually making an appeal for us. He is always continually speaking on our behalf. Do you want to know what Jesus is doing right now? Right this very moment? He's making an appeal on your behalf before the Father. He's interceding on your behalf before the Father. He's advocating on your behalf, my behalf, before the Father. That just blows my mind. I mean, I am overwhelmed by the reality of that and just how it relates to me. And I think, right? I mean, I think that way. I think just about me, and that's like a selfish part of who I am. There's some uttermost for you there, the confession from front. And I am overwhelmed by that truth that just happens for me all the time. And then I'm overwhelmed by the fact that we have a room full of people that it's happening all the time for right now at the same time. We live in a city in which he's doing this for so many people in this city. So many people in this state, so many people in this country, so many people in this world. He is constantly interceding and advocating and making an appeal in front of the Father on our behalf, all at the same time. Can you hear how great a high priest we have?